Christopher Nolan spent 2 decades being the one director fans trusted not to sell out. Now he's adapting Homer's Odyssey, and the trailer alone has managed to do something none of his other films ever did: turn his own fanbase against him before a single frame of the finished movie has screened anywhere. There's a bitter irony sitting at the center of this. A filmmaker who built his career resisting the shallow, franchise-hungry instincts of modern Hollywood is now the one delivering the exact kind of glossy, focus group product he used to be praised for avoiding. The question worth asking isn't whether the film will be good. It's what happened to the guy who used to guarantee it would be. For years, Nolan was the answer whenever someone complained that blockbusters had lost their soul. He took Batman, a character mocked for decades of camp, and turned him into the subject of a trilogy critics actually took seriously. He took physics lectures and turned them into Inception and Interstellar, movies that made money without leaning on a single pre-existing fanbase or Marvel contract. He cast actors because they fit the part, not because they had 10 million Instagram followers attached to a shoe deal. That reputation is exactly why the Odyssey backlash lands so hard. This wasn't supposed to happen to him. It was supposed to happen to someone else. Reports say Nolan built his script around Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. The 2017 version scholars often call the starkest and least romantic of the roughly 60 English translations that exist. Wilson's Odysseus isn't varnished into a hero. He's rendered closer to what the Greek actually says, flaws included. Critics who saw early cuts of the film came back with genuinely glowing notices, the kind of reviews Nolan usually gets, and then the trailer dropped. Instead of matching that critical warmth, it pulled in hundreds of thousands of dislikes, a number that no previous Nolan trailer, not Interstellar, not Oppenheimer, had ever come close to touching. None of this dislike count is really a verdict on cinematography or plot structure, because nobody arguing online has seen either yet. What triggered the backlash was casting. Specifically, the decision to cast a black actor in a role many viewers expected to look like a marble statue from a textbook. Historians will point out, correctly, that the ancient Mediterranean was a crossroads of trade routes and migration, ethnically far messier than the pale, Aryan-coded Greece pop culture usually imagines. That argument barely registers online. The reaction isn't really a debate about ancient demographics. It's a proxy war over whether audiences trust studios to cast for story instead of headlines, and that argument was decided in people's minds long before this trailer ever autoplayed. Strip away the casting arguments for a second and look at the trailer purely as a piece of marketing, and it still doesn't hold up well. Commenters have pointed out that it plays like a generic fantasy epic template, the kind of thing you'd expect from a mid-tier streaming series, not from the director of Dunkirk. The bigger issue is the dialogue delivery. Characters supposedly wandering the Aegean coast in the Bronze Age speak in flat, contemporary American accents, no dialect work, no sense of place. It's the kind of choice that recalls the opening of Saving Private Ryan, where the production went to enormous lengths to make 1944 sound and feel authentically foreign to a modern ear. Here, the effect is reversed. 3,000 years of distance gets flattened into something that sounds like it was recorded in a Burbank studio lot, and audiences noticed immediately. The casting sheet reads less like an ensemble chosen for the material, and more like a checklist assembled by a marketing department chasing 4 different audience segments at once. Elliot Page's role has been read by a large chunk of commenters as inclusion added for its own sake, rather than because the part demanded it. Travis Scott, an artist with no meaningful acting resume, is in the cast, a decision that looks less like casting and more like a brand partnership wearing a costume. Layer in a handful of actors best known for Marvel contracts, and you get what one popular comment called a Hollywood bingo card. Tick the box for a streaming-friendly name. Tick the box for a musician crossover. Tick the box for built-in social media buzz. None of it reads like a decision rooted in who best serves Homer. Underneath all of it sits one accusation that keeps repeating across comment sections. These choices were made for marketability, not for the story. Casting a musician with a fan base in the tens of millions isn't a creative risk, it's a distribution strategy. Modernizing the dialogue isn't an artistic reinterpretation, it's an assumption that audiences can't sit with unfamiliar cadences for 2.5 hours. For 15 years, Nolan cashed in on the idea that he was different, that his name on a poster meant the decisions inside the film were made by an artist, not a spreadsheet. This trailer is the first real evidence that the spreadsheet won. Zoom out, and the pattern isn't limited to one director. Studios are increasingly run by finance people who treat a $200 million tentpole the way a hedge fund treats a diversified portfolio, cast for statistical audience, overlap, write for the broadest possible demographic map, and let the algorithm pick the leads. Meanwhile, low-budget horror has quietly been outperforming those bets. Films built in the barbarian mold, or internet-native horror concepts pulled from backroom-style creepypasta, have been turning million-dollar budgets into tenfold returns, purely because they feel handmade instead of committee-built. Investors are starting to notice that authenticity now sells better than polish, which makes the executive logic behind something like this Odyssey trailer look less like a safe bet and more like an outdated one. That distrust boiled over recently in an unrelated but telling moment when Elon Musk publicly mocked Tom Holland, one of the most manufactured young stars currently working in blockbusters. Holland's response online came across as thin and rehearsed, and the internet piled on almost instantly, turning the exchange into a meme within hours. The specifics of that spat barely matter. What matters is the reflex it revealed. Audiences are primed to turn on manufactured stardom the moment it shows a crack, because the trust in that machine has already worn through. The Odyssey is one of the oldest surviving stories about exile, memory, and the cost of coming home, material that has survived nearly 3,000 years precisely because it can be reshaped without breaking. What should have been a serious, maybe even historic adaptation is instead trending for a trailer with a dislike count. No Nolan project has ever produced discussed less for Wilson's spare and brutal language than for a nickname stuck to one actress by commenters mocking her as Helen of Detroit. A translation praised by classicists for finally stripping away centuries of softening has become, in this rollout, an ironic footnote to a marketing failure. The myth survived Troy, survived a decade at sea, survived 60 translators. Whether it survives its own trailer is still an open question.